I've run out of time. I yield back.
Thank you.
This is a fun game we're playing.
Mr. Secretary,
Not a game.
let's talk about
answer
clinical
questions and to ask questions and don't give me a chance to answer them. Don't give me time to answer them.
Well, maybe in some of my questions you can elaborate on some of that. I want to ask you about the clinical trials because she does have that up on her poster there. Clinical trials are the forefront of research, innovation, and oftentimes represent that last hope for cancer patients and other patients addressing chronic disease when traditional treatments have been effective. These clinical trials are often lead to getting life-saving drugs to the market. Has HHS or any sub-agency assessed the impact of patient access to clinical trials through the reorganization effort?
We are not cutting any clinical trials. We're not cutting any clinical trials. We're not cutting drug development.
Thank you.
Cutting administrative costs.
A question on indirect costs, because you know this is a biggie. When it was announced that that NIH announced it would cap indirect costs at 15% for research. We talked about this actually in our meeting. We talked about the possible adverse effects of this. And like I've heard from West Virginia University, Marshall University, which receives smaller amounts, but I've heard from everybody across the country in terms of the research. West Virginia University is a member of the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, and they are working along with schools and independent research organizations across the country to come up with a new model for indirect costs. Are you aware of this effort, and have you met with them to discuss their work?
I haven't met with them, but we are talking with lots of people about a new way to fund indirect
Are you aware
costs.
of the effort that's going on with a whole bunch of stakeholders that are trying to figure out a way to do this better?
Yes, we are, and Jay Bhattacharya is very interested in this. And as you know, Senator, there was some of the private universities that were abusing that. We had Stanford, which has tens of billions of dollar endowment that was using our money. We wasted $9 billion last year of NIH's budget on indirect costs. We're paying some of these universities up to 78%. That money was not going to research, not all of it. In the public universities, we are very much aware that those universities are using the money well, that it is absolutely necessary for them. And we're looking at a series of different ways that we can fund those costs through them, but not through the independent indirect cost structure, which loses all control, which deprives us of all control of how that money is spent.
Well, in my many conversations with a lot of the research, because I don't think anybody here wants to lose our valuable research, and I put you in that bucket as well. I do know there's a recognition that there's not enough transparency, that the system needs to change, and so this group that's being put together, I think, is very thoughtful in their approach, and I would encourage you, as you've already done with the head of NIH.
Yeah, and I'm happy, Senator Capito. I could talk to you right now in detail about some of the alternatives that we are considering. Okay. But we are taking it seriously, and we understand. But you know, in Maine, at the University of Maine, the University of Alabama, many of these other state schools badly need this research. They're doing cutting-edge research, and they need that money that was going through indirect costs, but we think there's a better way to pay that out.
Okay. Well, we want to work with you on that. Let me talk about rural health. I mentioned it in my opening statement. I know you've been to our state, so you understand the rural nature of many of our states. You know, there's such significant healthcare challenges in rural America, a lot of it around access. The rates of chronic conditions like diabetes and heart disease are among the highest in the country in rural America. HRSA programs are critical to rural health and initiatives. And you've, in your budget, announced a cut to HRSA programs. I am concerned about that because of the access issue and because of the inequities that I think I see, and I think we see sometimes between where people have easier access to health care than in rural America. You got transportation issues, you have connectivity issues, you have just generational issues of passing down different diseases. How is rural America going to be better under your new reorganization?
You know, there's a lot of ways, as you point out, under HRSA, and this is a priority for me. It's one of the commitments I made. When I was doing my Senate confirmation, it was the issue that was most often raised by the various senators who I talked to. These facilities, we're seeing an epidemic of closures in rural hospitals, rural areas around the country, and these not only provide critical access to care. If you don't have that hospital, people may have to drive 2 or 3 hours to get to a site, and that means people will die. They also are critical to the economy and the culture of rural America. They provide jobs and high-paying jobs, and they're economic drivers for those communities. So we're determined to keep them open and to do everything that we can to help them. And we're doing that through a combination of different ways under HRSA, through the community health centers, the National Health Service Corps, which provides badly needed personnel, which is a huge deficit in rural areas. The GME program, which does education for those through rural health, but also through innovations like to provide better health care through telehealth and through AI and through wearables and apps that can actually save people hospital trips. I spent 2 hours yesterday meeting with the CEOs of some of the biggest and most effective health tech companies in the country, and the potential that we have to transform rural health care. For me, I walked out of that meeting very, very optimistic and very excited about the capacity that we now have through technology and AI to transform, to save, to rescue rural health care around this country.
Thank you very much. Senator Durbin.
Thank you for being here.